right, thank you very much. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, great. My name is Tim Hurdle, the Director of Technology at EDP Renewables, but important clarification, in a wind energy company, that means I'm in charge of engineering support, not IT. So there's a few things we've learned about today at this conference. The first is software conferences are much nicer than wind energy conferences. And two, we have a lot to learn about BPM software. So I'm here today with Jaymeet Gulati, one of our developers, and Chris Goldsberry from our corporate development group. And we were just going to share a little bit about our development process for our COBRA tool, short for collaboration. Basically, I took over a group in late 2010 that was the merger of two different groups. I had a lot of things going on, and we'll get more to it in the presentation, but I think what you might take away from our presentation is we do not have a staff of BPM software experts. We have never programmed anything in BPM before. And we basically bought Appian, bought 80 hours of consulting services from them, and everything else we just did ourselves on what we thought would be okay. And so maybe we have a slightly different perspective from folks like you who go to these conferences and have better drawings than we probably do. So well, let's see. So anyways, a little bit about EDP. We're the third biggest renewable energy electrical generator in the country. We have operations across 12 states. And to give you a little money context, this is a little over $7 billion of assets. So to support technically these $7 billion of assets, we had about 15 centralized engineers in my department that supported about 100 people out in the field. And so, as the leader of this group with 15 people, clearly a constrained resource, when I first took over, I realized a rather terrifying thing, which is I had no idea what people were working on. I mean, generally, people were very busy. I didn't doubt that they were working, just exactly what they were working on and were they working on the most important things for the company. I had no idea. I really didn't. So kind of the first thing I decided when I took over was, well, we need to do something. And I wasn't so sophisticated then to realize it was a BPM tool, but I knew we needed something. And specifically, something that would address these core problems. Lack of process clarity. We had nothing. I mean, we had no paper processes. I often describe this as the best and worst thing about renewable energy. There's no processes. So you get to make everything up, which is kind of fun. But it's also incredibly challenging at the beginning because no one really agrees. And it's a constant struggle to get different levels of the organization to agree on how to handle things, when to hand things off between groups, et cetera. We also had minimal audit trail on high-value cases. So again, with $7 billion of assets, depending on the breadth of units that it impacts, we were talking issues that ranged in $1 to $100 million of damage potential to our wind farms that had to be settled either commercially or technically. And we were controlling it largely in emails and people's sort of personal accounts. And if that person ever left the company, all that knowledge and information would leave with them. So we were taking a big value risk in our company by doing business this way. We had no standard system for prioritization of problems. So in addition to no process of how to handle things, we didn't really even have an agreed upon way to determine how important something is and where our small group of 15 people should actually be working. I think we would generically, if I were to look back, I would admit that we probably just worked on whatever people were complaining the loudest about, which hopefully is a unique situation to our group, but it was clearly a problem. And then we had serious constraints on technical resources, both in my group with only the 15 people for the large number of assets we had across 12 states, but also on the IT side, we do not have a very full featured IT department. Our total company size is 300 today, but only 50 people when I started. So we've had 600% growth in a couple of years. And it's led to some really challenging resource problems, both for the high turnover, new people coming in, knowledge management. All these things combined gave me the idea to say, let's go out and let's do something. And so I defined pretty simply what I wanted the team that would be leading this project to work on. And it was pretty simple. Again, not knowing about BPM, I sort of put out these goals as what I'd like to see happen. One, the most important part of the system is our people. And there's a couple levels to this. One is people as an obstacle. People do not want to change. How are we going to make sure people agree with what we're doing and buy into the system? Because also people are the users of the system. And if they are not inputting anything, there's nothing for us to work on. So we have to be very sure that the method of entering problems is very easy and that people will adopt it quickly. The system should drive action and not just track issues. This was the one that was nearest and dearest to my heart because we looked at a lot of pre-packaged systems for issue tracking. So like, this broke, fix it. Like, this person called and needs help, go do that. But what we really were looking for, because we didn't have such clear process and such close-ended cases, we needed something that you could say, this is broken, and the end result is we need to have a different part in the work instruction, and the system had to then change the work instruction too, so that we never made that problem again. So it's a little different than a ticketing system. It is really a case management system where you're handling the issue, not just fixing the one problem, but making sure you're addressing that problem on all the other machines in the fleet as well. I guess I say here the final product will be a complete functional BPM system. The initial one was just, it will be complete. You know, I was really concerned with having a complete product. We had had some efforts in trying to do this before, and it consisted of generating a notebook full of paper with process maps in it, and maybe an email or an Excel spreadsheet, and it just never worked. Like, you'd push this notebook out to the sites, and it was like, great, throw it in the trash, keep going and doing their business how they would. But this one I was like, it needs to be complete, because we need to get the buy-in, and we need to be able to tell everyone, you either need to do this, or you can leave the company. That was the level that I wanted to get with the system, because if you don't have everyone on board, then it's just not going to work. The last one was we needed to be able to support the product internally. I put a high value on this because I wanted us to understand the system we were working with. And you'll see as I talk a little bit about our RFP process, we put a high priority on this topic, and that's why we ultimately chose Appian. And the last one was focus more on value, less on cost. And that relates a little bit to the RFP. We didn't necessarily pick the cheapest person, or we didn't confine ourselves to a certain budget that we were looking at. Because we had such high value items, we could say, look, it's important that we buy the right system, not the cheapest system. And so I think you'll see how we approach that on this slide. We basically, knowing nothing about BPM, we ultimately decided, yes, it doesn't look like SharePoint is going to work. It doesn't look like spreadsheets are the right answer. It's going to be really hard to custom program something. So this thing we heard about is BPM, sounds pretty great. Let's have an evaluation process where we not only sent out technical requirements, which this was our first lesson. Every BPM software says they can do everything, right? Like, there's this quality score that represents what they said they could do. Everybody can do everything, right? Except for these poor people who couldn't do it. A little out of market over here. But so then it really became, and the price, I don't have labels here, but like generically there was maybe not a huge discrepancy. And so what it really came down to was we decided to have a second stage of our process where we had all of the developers come into our office and do a 4-hour demonstration where we gave them a SQL database, a sample process flow, and said, build an issue management system, connect to the SQL database, and walk us through as a process owner and as a supervisor and show us what it looks like. And Appian, without question, blew it away as far as how quickly they could do it and gave us confidence that we could do it ourselves. And so we decided to select them as the winner. So at that point, I realized I was going to be of no more value to the process because I don't know how to program BPM systems. So Jaymeet Gulati took over and did a lot of our development. I think this is going to be the most interesting part for you, and he'll tell you a little bit more about what makes our implementation interesting and why we're here today.